Okay, so what if the strangest, most absolutely mind-bending discovery in all of modern physics was actually echoing a truth that was written down in the very first pages of the Bible? Today we're diving into the bizarre world of quantum mechanics and looking at how it might just offer a startling new lens to understand creation itself.
Welcome to Christian Podcast, where we look at the world and our own lives through a Christian lens. The source for today's explainer poses a really fascinating question. Can the dual nature of light give us a whole new glimpse into the nature of the divine? You know, this is one of the most famous lines ever written. It's simple, it's powerful, it's majestic, and for thousands of years, we've understood it as this foundational statement of divine creation. But what if there's more to it? What if modern physics actually gives us a new language to appreciate just how deep it really is? That is the core question we are digging into today. We're going to see how a strange, super counterintuitive principle at the very heart of quantum mechanics gives us this remarkable parallel to the biblical concept of creation by the word. All right, so to build this bridge between faith and science, we first have to understand the science side of the equation, and that means we've got to take a trip into the quantum realm to face a puzzle that completely shattered our classical understanding of how reality even works. So, for centuries, physicists were totally divided. Is light made of tiny little objects, what Isaac Newton called corpuscles? Or is it a continuous wave, kind of like a ripple in a pond? For a really long time, the wave theory was winning, especially after experiments back in the 1800s showed light could create these interference patterns, which was something only waves were known to do. But then came the 20th century and quantum mechanics, and it revealed something truly bizarre. Light, and in fact, all matter, behaves as both a particle and a wave. It's not one or the other, it's somehow both at the same time. This is wave-particle duality, and it's the exact point where our everyday intuition just completely breaks down. The most famous example of this is the double-slit experiment. So if you shoot tiny particles like electrons at a wall with two slits in it, you'd expect to see two solid lines on the screen behind it, right? Kind of like shooting paintballs for a fence. But that is not what happens. Instead, you get this complex interference pattern as if each electron was a wave that went through both slits at the same time and interfered with itself. And get this, even when you fire them one at a time, this wave pattern still shows up. But here's where it gets really, really weird. If you put a detector at the slits to watch which one the electron goes through, the wave pattern completely vanishes, and you just get the two simple lines you'd expect from particles. The very act of measuring it forces the electron to stop acting like a wave of possibilities and choose to be a particle in one single location. Wild, right? So just keep that bizarre idea in your head for a second. A wave of possibilities that collapses into a single reality only when it's observed. Now, let's see how this quantum puzzle gives us a fascinating parallel to a foundational concept in Christian theology, the nature of the divine word. So our source material lays out this incredible analogy. On one side, you have the dual nature of matter. It's both a wave of potential and a particle of reality. And on the other, you have the dual nature of what Christian theology calls the logos, or the divine word. And that observer effect, where just measuring something turns possibility into reality, that's paralleled by the idea of divine speech bringing things into being. You know, the Gospel of John describes the logos in almost these exact dual terms. In the beginning was the Word. That speaks to a transcendent, eternal, kind of wave-like reality. But the Word became flesh points to a specific, tangible, particle-like incarnation in history. It's a divine complementarity. Okay, so let's take this analogy just one step further. If the divine word has a dual nature, just like light, what does that tell us about the act of creation itself? Well, this is where the idea of creation by observation comes into play. First, just look at this number. It's an absolutely mind-bending fact about our physical reality. That's the percentage of any given atom that is pure empty space. The solid world we touch and feel is mostly an illusion, a pattern of energy held in place. The scientific fact echoes a theological one, that creation isn't just a one-time thing, but it's constantly and actively being sustained by the Word of God. So using this framework, we can actually reread the creation account in a new way. The primordial state, darkness over the face of the deep, that's like a quantum field of pure potential. God's speech, let there be, acts as the divine observation that focuses all that potential. And the result, and there was light, is the collapse of that potential into actual physical reality.
And this idea of an observer bringing things into focus isn't just some new quantum concept. It really resonates with ancient theology, like St. Augustine's idea of divine illumination. He believed that just like our eyes need light to see, our minds need the light of God to understand truth. This analogy takes that even further, suggesting that reality itself needs the light of divine observation to even exist. So, this is a really fascinating cosmic theory, but what does it mean for us, personally? Well, the source material argues that this analogy has some pretty profound implications for how we can actively live out our faith, almost treating it as a form of focused action. See, if God's observation collapses potential into reality, then our faith can be seen as a way of participating in that creative process. We do this by focusing our own attention. First, by having a really clear vision of God's promises. Second, by sustaining that vision through prayer. And third, by taking even the smallest action, which starts to turn that unseen promise into a tangible reality. In this framework, faith is really the art of focusing. Think about it. When Abraham left his home, his physical action was the observation that began to collapse God's unseen promise of a great nation into a physical reality. His obedience was the very instrument that turned potential into actuality. So, where does all this leave us? We've explored a bizarre scientific puzzle and a really deep theological concept. What happens when we actually bring these two worlds, quantum science and biblical faith, together? Well, the point isn't to say science proves the Bible. Not at all. It's more to suggest that they might just be two different languages describing the same underlying reality. One uses the language of math and experiments, and the other uses the language of poetry, stories, and revelation. And it's really crucial to make a distinction here. The wonders of the quantum world, theologians call that general revelation, God revealing truth through the natural world. But the heart of the Christian faith is special revelation, a specific direct message centered on the cross. So in this view, God isn't some distant scientist observing an experiment. He is the loving sustainer who is intimately involved in his creation. So we want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. If every single atom, every star, every moment is the result of a divine utterance, a constant speaking into existence, how does that change the way you see the world around you and your place inside of it? Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.